Now, I know some of you probably clicked on this video and deep, deep down in your heart and soul, you're thinking to yourself, oh boy, he's going to go in here. He used to call her the Crypt Keeper, for God's sakes. Like, yeah, bring it on. And I'm sorry to disappoint you. No, I'm not going in like that. I'm just not. It's not like she was Billfold Words. It's not like she was Jerry Reinsdorf. Much, much different conversation for either one of those two. Virginia McCaskey, she doesn't elicit that level of hatred, scorn, and vile. She just doesn't. Is it because she was like an old great grandmotherly mama bear to the Bears organization? No, just not as many reasons to hate her, believe it or not. But we saw the news the other day that she had passed away at the age of 102. 102 years old. I think just to put that into context, that's a number and it sounds huge, but just when you look at the things that she experienced in her lifetime, it gives you the context of just what a life and set of life experiences Virginia McCaskey had. She was there for Red Grange's barnstorming tour in 1925 when he signed with the Chicago Bears, and you could certainly argue helped save the NFL and certainly saved the New York Giants when they played at the Polo Grounds. Virginia McCaskey was there. She experienced the Great Depression firsthand. Yeah. Like, she lived through that. She saw Red Grange and Bronco Nagurski play for the Chicago Bears. She was there for the NFL's first championship game. She was there for the NFL's first championship game held indoors. For crying out loud, Virginia McCaskey was around and college age at the time of Pearl Harbor and lived through the whole World War II experience. She saw the Chicago Bears be a dynasty in the NFL in the 1930s and 1940s. She lived through that. She graduated from college at Drexel University in the 1940s at a time when many women didn't even attend college. That wasn't a thing. It was a traditional, like, know your role and stay your ass in the kitchen. And you could say, well, she was a child of privilege, sure, but like, she still went to college and graduated at a time that just wasn't a very common, frequent occurrence for women. She saw the Chicago Bears win 7 NFL titles and lose in 4 other NFL title games in her life. And this is pre-Super Bowl era, mind you. That's how far back this lady went. She was alive for the Cold War, the Beatles invasion, if you want to call it the British invasion, fine, the Civil Rights Movement. Like when we talk about the history of like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., she was alive to hear those brothers speak. The JFK assassination, Watergate. She saw every single Hall of Famer that played for the Chicago Bears in her lifetime. She saw her team win a Super Bowl and lose another one. She was there when the team moved from Wrigley Field to Soldier Field. She also lived through the invention of things such as television, microwaves, cell phones, the internet, artificial intelligence. These are all things that she saw come into being in the marketplace in her 102 years of life. That's crazy. And then personally, she saw her own brother die in 1979. Her father died 4 years later. She had 11 damn kids. I want to say that again. 11 damn kids. Yes, she also had to fire her own son as team president, and that's Michael McCaskey back in 1999 when he botched the whole Dave McGinnis hire situation. And then in 2020 had to bury her own son. That's rough. No parent ever wants to bury one of their kids. She saw her husband pass away in 2003. At the time of Virginia's passing a couple days ago, dating back to when Ralph Wilson passed away in, I think it was 2019, she was the longest tenured NFL owner at that time. Like active NFL tenured owner. She had it by a good margin. Like this woman lived a hell of a life. Just think about all the things that she saw and experienced that I didn't even mention. Insane. So you come down to like, what is her legacy? Now, obviously, at the end of the day, it's not even meant disrespectfully. It's just reality. She's a Nepo baby. And oh, by the way, it was never intended for her to be the heir apparent, the next owner of the Bears after Papa Bear George Halas. That was supposed to be her brother, Papa Bear's son, Muggs Halas, George Jr. And when he passed away suddenly from a heart attack in 1979, it put her as next in line. So she kind of was her tragedy or accidency, however you want to put it, and then would go on to be the owner of the Bears for over 42 years. Amazing how that works out. I think she is a really good example of a certainly nice woman, family woman, that I would never ever have questioned her devotion or loyalty or love for the Chicago Bears, because when you talk about it was in her blood, more than you can argue any owner in the NFL today, the Chicago Bears were her. She was them. I'm just saying, like, she saw so much of the NFL transformation. She saw the Super Bowl be created. She saw the AFL-NFL merger. Like, it was so close. This organization was so closely identified with her, and she was so closely identified with it. Like, yeah. Like, it is unique to me in that respect. You can mention other owners, but when you talk about legacy owners, this is as legacy as it gets in the modern NFL context. And, for all the failure that she oversaw of the Chicago Bears, and there's plenty of that, and all the mediocre Bears football, you knew I had to work that in once, right? That she was ultimately responsible for. The reality is there were some success, certainly Hall of Fame players during her time, and they did win 2 conference championships and a Super Bowl. So a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of wasted seasons of my life, certainly. But there were a couple of moments of glory there, and we got to give credit for that as well. But then she also oversaw, the eventual disintegration of the should have been but never was dynasty of the 80s Bears. So, it's okay to have some lingering resentment. She entrusted her kids too damn much. She was the one that ultimately, even with the kids having all the shares, she had the 80% voting power, blah, 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 blah. It's one of those deals where her legacy, in some ways is a trailblazer as a female owner of an NFL team, but at the same point in time, that didn't come from her own skills. She inherited that shit. She's a Nepo baby. And the only reason the McCaskey family has never sold the team is because they don't have anything else. The family is not good enough, respectfully, or skilled enough to be able to make this type of fortune anywhere else. They inherited it, and that's the American way in some respects, right? So her legacy is kind of a complicated one. Saw so many things, a matriarchal figure, but oversaw a continued decline in the importance and relevance and the competitiveness of the Chicago Bears. That all falls under her watch too, and just because she's passed away now doesn't change any of that shit. But what really is interesting now is what's going to happen with the ownership situation of the Bears. Because as I mentioned, she had basically all of the voting power, right, or 80% of it. But the shares that she owned, true ownership, was about 20% has always been the reports, which you would anticipate that will be split amongst the remaining kids, maybe grandkids, to minimize some of the impacts of estate taxes and so forth from her passing. I really wonder if things could get sticky goofy George, yook, yook. And that is certainly possible. Feels like that's the way it would flow. But there could be some type of challenge here, like who knows? Could get hot, could get real hot, or it could be much ado about nothing. The shares are distributed. George takes over Virginia's voting power, and again, nothing really changes. Um, but yeah, like it's interesting. In my life as a Chicago Bears fan, there's only been one owner of the team that I've known. Like I'm too young to remember Papa Bear Alice, right? He passed away when I was 2. But I remember Virginia McCaskey in her tacky fur coats and all things. Um, so it's a weird feeling because she is all I remember as an owner. And we are literally stepping into uncharted, unprecedented territory for the Chicago Bears. It'll be very interesting to see how this dynamic plays out. So, thoughts to the family. But I do hope, as it was with Bill Wirtz 2 decades ago, when he passed, things started to change very quickly for the Blackhawks. They started airing the games on television, the home games on television, and just the whole mindset of that organization shift, and they eventually built into that mid 2010s dynasty, right? That won 3 Stanley Cups. We could only hope for the same type of outcome here. But the reality is that Virginia hasn't really been running the team for a long time now. She was a primary owner in name only, and we all know that. But again, will be very interesting to see how this plays out going forward. And a much different feeling for this team, knowing that the mama bear, if you will, is no longer in charge. And perhaps this is something that in some ways will motivate this Bears team in 2025. Hey, crazier stuff has happened, right? But yeah, like that woman lived a hell of a life. 102 years. She got to be an NFL owner for over all the other stuff in the world that she lived through and experienced. Crazy, crazy life experience right there. So you could do a lot worse than her, that's